What kind of economic recovery is Ireland currently experiencing?
Well, we are experiencing across 2020 economic developments that are still very tough. We are seeing some encouraging signs now in relation to consumption in retailers, in relation to data coming through from our banks, in terms of transactions that are now accelerating. But Guy, it would be fair to say that for the second half of the year, we're hoping for a gradual recovery versus where we were in the first half of the year, with the likelihood being that the stronger recovery will take place in the early part of 2021.
One of the critical factors that a lot of governments are trying to gauge at the moment is when to end income support. My understanding is that income support in Ireland is going to roll off in terms of the COVID coverage, probably towards kind of the middle and end of August. What happens then? Are we going to see a big pickup in unemployment? How are you going to manage this process?
So exactly what I want to avoid is what's included in your very question, which is that we see a surge in unemployment, because it would be a very Pyrrhic victory if we were to completely shut off income support schemes for the benefit of our national finances, and those who are on income support schemes lose their jobs and then have to receive unemployment benefits. So what we are doing at the moment is two things. The first thing is I've made clear, I want to restate it here again, that we will not be turning off the system in its entirety by the middle of August. To do so would be a cliff edge effect that would have a very negative effect on our ability to get jobs back quickly in Ireland. And the second thing that we are doing is we're now analysing the performance of parts of our economy that are on the wage subsidy scheme, and that's now given us some insights regarding what we might be able to do in the future, and maybe bring something in that could be of help to more of our economy, but for a bit longer, but in a different shape and structure to what it is at the moment.
Which areas are you talking about? I'm assuming this is a more service sector focused scheme that you may be kind of hinting at here. Is that what you're alluding to?
Well, that's where the insights are coming from the most at the moment, because we are seeing some parts of our economy that are on the wage subsidy scheme, that, for example, are in our hospitality and our services sector, where we're gaining some insights regarding the ability of companies like that and sectors in our economy like that to recover while they're on our wage subsidy scheme. But I am going to be careful about saying we can do something that's sector specific, because my now lengthy experience of issues like this is that if you try to make something very sector specific, you tend to miss out on other sectors, or sometimes have consequences that are unintended. So the choices that we'll either look at are, can we do something for one part of our economy, or is there something that we could do that would be in a different shape that we could do for most of our economy? Because the benefit of the wage subsidy scheme as we've had it at the moment is that it was a broad policy measure. And because of that, it was, I believe, successful in allowing for the retention of 500,000 jobs in our economy. And I don't want to put those 500,000 jobs at risk this summer by doing something that's too abrupt while our economy is still recovering.
What are the longer term effects on the Irish economy going to be? You are an FDI economy. You have been for really quite some time. Does that change in the post-COVID world? Do you need to kind of reorientate the way that the economy functions? I'm also mindful of the fact that Americans can't fly at the moment into the region. And I'm wondering, kind of, as we see some of these, the effects of some of these policies kind of in the medium term, and it looks like international flying is going to take quite a while. Again, what effect are things like that having?
That's a huge question that my counterparts all over Europe and indeed all over the world are currently dealing with. So there's two things at the moment that are increasingly evident to me as we think about the future shape of the Irish economy. And then there's one political issue that we have to reflect on really carefully. The first thing is, to deal with your point, I think it is going to be the case for at least the short term that our tourism and some of our hospitality sectors will be kind of more inward looking for a while, as we see changes begin to take place in global travel. So I think, for example, domestic tourism here in Ireland is going to be more important than it has been in recent years. The second thing that's going to be an important part of the future Irish economy is within our FDI model. There are some sectors within that model that I think are likely to grow even quicker in the future and even be stronger in the future. For example, FDI companies that are here in Ireland, that are in medical devices, that are in pharmaceuticals, that are part of coming up with the broad solution to living with and then dealing with COVID. And then on a political level, one of the things that I know we're going to have to reflect on in Europe is that as we emerged from the great financial crisis, the inclusivity of our recovery, the evenness of that recovery was not what it could have been. And that had really, really, really profound political and social consequences. And what's on my mind now, as I respond back to the second financial crisis of my political lifetime, is how within Europe and within Ireland, we can have a recovery that is different to the recovery of where we were a decade ago, and learn from what could have been done differently when we were at that point a decade ago.
You bring up the pan-European policies. That takes me logically to what is happening in the Eurogroup. You are one of the names in the frame, potentially to lead the Eurogroup. Do you have a sense at this point in time how much support you have? Is the EPP going to back you? Do you have a nose count? What are you seeing in the tea leaves at this point?
The EPP, the European People's Party, issued a statement earlier on in the week indicating their support for my candidacy, which I'm very grateful for. I've been a member now of the EPP and the EPP party in Ireland now since the early 1990s. So I really appreciate the support that they're giving to me. In terms of support that I'm receiving at the moment, I have received and I'm receiving a broad level of support from those who I am talking to. But I'm a politician. I've contested many, many elections now. And we are a week away from votes being cast. And I have to make my case to all of my colleagues. There's simply nothing that can be taken for granted. It's going to be a very, very hotly contested presidency contest. So those tea leaves at the moment are still swirling around, and There's no clear signal apparent yet. But we've a week to go, and I'm going to continue to be campaigning very hard.
Wouldn't it be a good idea for the Eurogroup to finally have a female leader?
And we have in my good colleague Nadia, an absolute, very, very strong and very, very experienced candidate. But it is the role of all of my colleagues in the Eurogroup to weigh up all of the qualities that we offer, that each candidate offers, and make what they believe to be the right decision. But we have in Nadia and in Pierre, I have two really, really good colleagues that are going forward for that post. And I believe all of us would be able to do well, but obviously I'm making the case for my own candidacy to my colleagues.
Okay. Final quick question on Brexit. Again, back to the tea leaves. The tea leaves seem to be becoming a little clearer there, maybe. Michel Barnier indicating that a deal could be possible. My question to you is, what kind of a deal do you now see emerging if we are to see one?
So the first thing is that I agree with the premise of your question, actually, which is that a deal is possible. I, Guy, have now spent 4 years dealing with all of the political and economic consequences of Brexit. And at many different points, an agreement either looked unlikely or even impossible at a few different points. An agreement was reached and progress was made. So I do believe that it is possible in the second half of this year to get agreement. Within Europe, we need to really continue to strongly support the efforts of Mr. Michel Barnier and his team, who've done an exemplary job. And the question is one of breadth now in terms of how wide that agreement will be. From the point of view of Ireland and many of our colleagues within the European Union, we would like to see as broad an agreement as possible, excuse me, but that does depend on what is possible with our colleagues and friends in the United Kingdom. And the overwhelming priority from a European point of view is to protect the integrity of the single market and European interests. And alongside that, recognising the changing world that we're in, the geopolitical context of getting agreement, is to be creative and work hard to get an agreement with the UK. Because even though they are leaving the European Union, We have so much in common from a culture and value point of view. And that means that this is an agreement worth striving for.